Okay, welcome to today's session. We're going to go over pages number 9 through 10 of the agreement of sale. The last time we went over the home inspection portion of it, and it was quite a bit. Did anybody have any questions on that or any further comments or concerns that we can answer before we start today? Kathy, did you have something you wanted to mention or?
Hi. So I just wanted to, I know when we talked about inclusions and excluded items on there, just that when you write that in, write I've been helped with that several times to write the existing refrigerator, washer and dryer, because I know there's been situations where they've swapped it out for something different. So if your client's expecting whatever brand that's in there and they swap it out and replace it with something, it may not be that exact one.
Yep, it's a very important comment actually. Because these home inspectors, if you hire Mike Shealy to go through a house, he actually gets the serial number of them too. Because then he puts it into his system, and if there's a recall or anything, people can tell. Okay. But yes, that's always a very good idea. If not, at least like the location of it, because most people have more than one fridges, right? So very good point, Kathy. All right, so paragraph number 14, titles, surveys, and costs. So the three things there: title, survey, and costs. Who pays for what? Paragraph A, within blank days 7, if not specified, from the execution date of this agreement, buyer will order from a reputable title company for delivery to seller a comprehensive title report on the property. So, you know how Seth always asks for that? We never really have to worry about that particular scenario because Seth takes care of that for us, is getting a copy of that title policy, title binder. Okay. Upon receipt, buyer will deliver a free copy of the title report to seller. So if you were in an office where you didn't have a Seth, you would definitely want to have a copy of that so that you can make sure that whatever liens they're talking about is there or not. Okay. So fortunately for us, we have Seth to take care of that for us. Buyer is encouraged to obtain an owner's title insurance policy to protect buyer. An owner's title insurance policy is different from a lender's title insurance policy, which will not protect buyer from claims and attacks on the title. Okay. Owner's title insurance policies come in standard and enhanced versions. Buyer should consult with a title insurance agent about buyer's options. Buyer agrees to release and discharge any and all claims and losses against broker for buyer should buyer neglect to obtain an owner's title insurance policy. Okay. So again, we've had many instances where a cash buyer will say, well, I don't need title insurance. Okay, which is fine. If you pay cash, you don't have to buy it. It's not that you don't need to buy it, you don't have to buy it. Okay. So the problem then comes, a lot of attorneys will not hold the settlement or agree to delegate it to handle the transfer without title insurance. Okay. So we've always told clients, hey, I know you're buying this $1 million house and you don't want to buy title insurance. That's fine. That's your choice. But an attorney is going to charge you about $400 to do the transfer anyways. Okay. If you buy, let's say a $40,000 policy, which is probably only $400, not only do you get covered for $40,000, but the attorney will hold the settlement for you. I mean, any attorney will do it. So you might as well just get a little bit of coverage and get the attorney for basically free to do the transfer. So at least do that, okay? That was a little trick that Tim Costello taught me
Hey,
years ago.
Kong,
Yeah.
we actually can't do that. So forget.
Oh,
we
you
said
can't?
that. No,
Okay.
that was something that we had done for, yeah, that was a misunderstanding. We are not allowed to issue title for less than what the sales price is.
Okay.
Okay, so just
Thank
wanted
you
to
for
stop
being
you there,
here.
sorry.
Thank you for being here today to explain that. Okay.
Sure.
But it is very hard to find an attorney to do that, correct? Meaning like to hold a transfer without,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I mean, especially now, $1 million, maybe it's a little bit different, but a lot of times
Sure.
the attorney ends up charging you, close to the same amount of money and you're getting absolutely nothing for it. So you're not getting a title insurance policy, but you're still paying an attorney. So, yeah, so you just have to, a lot of times what we'll do is have them call myself or JB even, and JB can kind of go over and explain to them what the benefit is and then let them make their decision based off that.
sure. Sounds good. Mr. Wall, Matt Wall has a question. He's sitting right in front of me.
Well, I just had this happen. I had buyers in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. They want to get title insurance. It was the local title search. They did a title search. And it was the church selling the property. And it came out that there was a tax issue from an employee they hadn't paid. And so the amount of the tax had been paid was only $500. It was 15 years ago. They didn't know how much they were going to need to hold in escrow. And then the attorney said, well, there's no title insurance. I can't hold escrow.
Right.
They had to get title insurance anyway.
Gotcha. Yeah, Matt ran into a situation in Eastern PA where the buyer didn't want to buy title insurance, and there was something in the title search when they asked him to do a search, and they ended up having to buy title insurance because they couldn't hold escrow, right? Yeah. So again, consult with Aaron or JB, and if you have a client that's being a little difficult with that.
Nobody wants to touch it.
Right.
I scoured the earth.
Right. Yep. Attorneys will not do it. C, buyer will pay for the following. 1, title search, title insurance and or mechanics lien insurance or any fee for cancellation. 2, flood insurance, fire insurance, hazard insurance, mine subsidence insurance, or any fee for cancellation. The or any fee for cancellation is kind of a little important clause there. Because if the buyer terminates the agreement of sale, that's telling me they are still, supposed to pay for the title search and title insurance. Well, not so much the insurance, but the search at least. 3, appraisal fees and charges paid in advance to mortgage lender. And 4, customary settlement costs from the buyer and accruals. Okay. D, any survey or surveys required by the title insurance company or the abstracting company for preparing an adequate legal description of the property or the correction thereof will be obtained and paid for by the seller. Any survey or surveys desired by buyer or required by the mortgage lender will be obtained and paid for by the buyer. So it's kind of important to decipher between who's requiring you to do a survey. Is it the lender or is it the title company? If it's the title company, then the seller has to pay. If it's the mortgage company that's requiring it and the title company is okay with it, then the buyer pays because that's their mortgage. Okay. So that's another important one there, because how many times have we seen legal descriptions that when they're plotted don't close? How about it, Aaron?
Yes, that happens.
Awesome.
Another reason you want to make sure that you have title insurance, because that would, bring up the issue and then we can solve it at that point.
Right. E, the property will be conveyed with good and marketable title that is insurable by a reputable title insurance company at the regular rates, free and clear of all liens, encumbrances, and easements, excepting, however, the following: existing deed restrictions, historic preservation restrictions or ordinances, building restrictions, ordinances, easements of roads, easements of visible upon the ground, easements of record, and privileges or rights of public service companies, if any. Okay. Public service company, probably like a utility company, UGI, PP&L. Okay. F, if a change in seller's financial status affects seller's ability to convey title to the property on or before the settlement date or any extension thereof, seller shall promptly notify buyer in writing. A change in financial status includes, but is not limited to, seller filing bankruptcy, filing of a foreclosure lawsuit against the property, entry of a monetary judgment against seller, notice of public sale tax affecting the property, and seller learning that the sale price of the property is no longer sufficient to satisfy all liens and encumbrances against the property, meaning they have a shortfall. So, how can this be avoided? Matt Walls said, call and find what the payoff is. Correct. After you do a estimated seller's cost sheet, right? Because at the time of this signing, the seller also has to sign off that they had received a estimated cost sheet from you. So they have a payoff letter that says your seller owes $99,000 on this property. Okay, $99,316, let's say. Okay, what I always do is round that up to the nearest thousand. Okay, so I always round it up to, in that case, 100,000. So when I use that payoff figure in my estimate, and it comes very close, and we're talking like $1,000 or $2,000, that's probably close enough for me to contact Seth and say, I need a payoff on this, like ASAP. Okay, so if we can get one ordered as soon as possible so that we can make sure that there's enough money there. Then I tell the seller, look, you're right there on the border here. We're counting down to the last penny. I mean, we're prorating taxes to make sure you have enough to pay this house off. Do you have any funds available in case we have a shortfall? Okay. And let them be aware of that, because I'm usually accurate enough that, you know, within at least 1,000 or two. So if it's the wrong way, you're going to be in the negative. So hopefully you have some money to cover this deal. We haven't seen much of it lately because house prices have gone up so much. We haven't had any real short sales lately that I can remember of, even on our team, but it's going to come back. So just be prepared for that. Okay. Oh, one other thing, possible financial change of status too. For example, if they're in the middle of a bankruptcy, they just filed for bankruptcy. Child support, that'll come up. And that's why Seth is always on us about Social Security number, because they'll look up the seller and make sure that there is no financial status that we're not aware of. Okay. G, if a seller is unable to give good and marketable title that is insurable by a reputable title insurance company at the regular rates as specified in paragraph 14E, buyer may terminate this agreement by written notice to seller with all deposit monies returned to buyer, according to paragraph 26 of this agreement, or take such title as seller can convey, okay, at their own risk. If the title condition precludes seller from conveying title, buyer's sole remedy shall be to terminate this agreement. Upon termination, all deposit monies shall be returned to buyer according to the terms of paragraph 26 of this agreement of sale. And seller will reimburse buyer for any costs incurred by buyer for any inspections or certifications obtained according to the terms of this agreement. And for those items specified in paragraph 14C, items 1, 2, 3, and paragraphs 14D. Okay, so if the seller can't give title, and the buyer backs out, the seller's obligated to pay the buyer's out-of-pocket fees. Okay, and usually at that point, it's pretty substantial in a normal deal with all the inspections and appraisals. Okay. H, oil, gas, mineral, and other rights of this property may have been previously conveyed or leased, and sellers make no representation about the status of those rights unless indicated elsewhere in this agreement. And you indicate elsewhere with a oil, gas, and mineral rights addendum, and you check mark that box. Okay. I talks about coal notice, and it's just a notice. J, the property is not a recreational cabin as defined in the Pennsylvania Construction Code Act unless otherwise stated here. Okay. Aaron, have we dealt with any of that here locally, or Brooks? Anything that's like
No.
Michelle, is that part of that?
Not around here, but Potter County, you have that kind of stuff up there.
Okay. All right. K, this property is subject to a private transfer fee obligation, is not subject to a private transfer fee obligation unless otherwise stated here. And if it is, then you attach the addendum. Sorry, my computer's jumping around for some reason today. "15, notices, assessments, and municipal requirements. A, in the event any notices, in the event any notices of public and or private assessments as described in paragraph 10F, excluding assessed value, are received after seller has signed this agreement and before settlement, so while it's pending, seller will within blank days of receiving the notices and or assessments provide a copy of the notices and or assessments to buyer and will notify buyer in writing that seller will, 1, comply with the notices and or assessments at seller's expense before settlement." Okay. If seller fully complies with the notices and or assessments, buyer accepts the property and agrees to release. So, for example, let's say you get something from the township and it states that this needs to be fixed before you can sell the property. And the seller says, okay, done, I'll fix it. Then all you have to do is give notice to the buyer, let them know what the situation was, and to say it's going to be taken care of. And it's a moot point. Okay. Now, if the seller says, well, I'm not going to fix it, I'm not going to be living here anymore. You deal with it, Mr. Buyer. Number 2, not comply with the notices and or assessment. If seller chooses not to comply with the notices and or assessments or fails within the stated time to notify buyer whether seller will comply, buyer will notify seller in writing within 5 days that buyer will, 1, comply with the notice at buyer's expense and accepts the property, or 2, B, terminate this agreement by written notice to seller with all deposit monies going back to the buyer. Okay. And if buyer fails to respond themselves within the time period stated or fails to terminate, then they're buying the property. They accept the property. Okay. Now that was for public and private assessments. The next part B is talking about, repairs and improvements by the municipality. If required by law within 30 days from the execution date of this agreement, but in no case later than 15 days prior to settlement date, seller will order at seller's expense a certification from the appropriate municipal department disclosing notices of any uncorrected violations of zoning, housing, building, safety, or fire ordinances, and or certificate permitting occupancy of the property. If buyer receives a notice of any required repairs, improvements, buyer will promptly deliver a copy of the notice to seller. Okay. So this actually pertains more towards the Philadelphia area. Harrisburg City used to do this, and Pembroke, I'm not sure if they still do or not. They may for rental properties, but they require you to go to the borough or the city or the township and order a occupancy permit. They'll schedule time to come out and they'll look at the fire smoke detectors, they'll look at the building themselves and deem it safe for the next buyer. Okay, and it's almost like a home inspection, but it's more, I would say, in between a home inspection and an appraisal for a VA or FHA deal. Okay, they'll go through it and deem if anything's a safety issue. Okay, and then they'll issue an occupancy permit so that you can make a transfer. Okay, we ran into this last year when Michael Kopiak, who's not on the call here, he's one of our Philly agents, and he had to get a occupancy permit for a house, and this house was only like 3 years old. It was not old at all, in a very nice neighborhood, and we still had to go get that done because that was a rule within the township. Okay, so just be aware, if you're selling in a township that you're not familiar with, ask, call the township. Hey, what do we need to do in a transfer? Okay, because the thing is, there's only so many people that are allowed to do these inspections, and guess what? They get booked up. Okay. So once you get the report back and there are repairs that needs to be done, then the seller, within 5 days of receiving notice from the municipality that repairs improvements are required, seller will deliver a copy of the notice to buyer and notify buyer in writing that seller will A, make all the repairs to the satisfaction of the municipality. It doesn't say to the satisfaction of the seller or the buyer. It says to the satisfaction of the municipality. Okay. So if the municipality says, hey, you need some carbon monoxide detectors here. Okay. And they go get the $10 ones and put it in. Okay. And the municipality says, that's okay. And the buyer says, well, I don't want those cheapy ones. I want like the Ring one where I can hook it up to Bluetooth and everything. Okay. It's to the municipality's requirement or their satisfaction. Okay. So if the sellers make the repair, it's a moot point. B, the seller will not make the required repairs. If seller chooses not to make the required repairs or improvements, buyer will notify seller in writing within 5 days that buyer will A, accept the property, accept a temporary access certificate, temporary use and occupancy certificate, and agree to the release, or 2, terminate this agreement by written notice to seller with all deposit monies returned to buyer. Then if the buyer fails to respond within that time frame, then they're buying the property. Okay, they fail to respond or terminate, they're going to accept the property. and agree to the release. And they also accept the responsibility to perform the repair and improvements according to the terms of the notice provided by the municipality. Okay. If repairs, improvements are required and seller fails to provide a copy of the notice to buyer as required in this paragraph, seller will perform all repairs, improvements as required by the notice at seller's expense. So what that's saying is if the seller gets a notice, gets this report and never tells anybody and never discloses anything, then they're obligated to make the repairs if it's ever found out. Because paragraph 15B2 will survive settlement. Okay. So we're going to stop there because next Tuesday we'll pick up with the condominium planned community homeowners association notice. But any questions on today's topic? It's pretty simple, but we've run across couple of these scenarios before. You just have to know that it's in the contract and how to handle it. You know, who pays for what, when can the buyer terminate, and what type of municipal requirements can there be. The most common one I've seen is sidewalks. That's a big one. Shelley, you shook your head there. Did you have something? You're on mute.
There,
There you go.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, the sidewalks are always a big deal, especially in the borough, because if
Mhm.
they, are raised like an inch or what, call it a tripping hazard. And I've had sellers get notices and to have it done. Sidewalks.
Yep, that I've ran into that two times. I've only ever ran into that 2 times, and both times was sidewalk, that paragraph there.
Mhm.
Yep. New Cumberland, Matt said, is New Cumberland big on sidewalks? They are, but I don't know if they still do. I don't think New Cumberland does anymore, neither does Middletown. But remember they asked us to scope the sewer lines? Yep, Middletown Borough used to ask on a transfer for you to hire a plumber to scope the sewer line, make sure there were no roots. And it was like every one of them had it, something, because they're so old. Yes, sir. It was very expensive. That said, it's not cheap. So, all right. Any questions, folks? Okay. Next week we'll finish it up because we got 2 sessions and 4 pages, and we'll finish up. But I just need some ideas on other forms that you want us to go over. I'll be more than happy to do it. If you want to go over the consumer notice and see how we relay it to a customer in less than 60 seconds, let me know. There's other forms that we can go over, the sale and settlement forms, appraisal forms, escalation clauses, whatever you guys want. We'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday, so. All right. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you next Tuesday, okay?